it very difficult not to say hi to our friends, not to be not to be connected physically with our friends and families and religious places and things like that. So COVID has changed how we behave and how we live. And it can be fairly concluded that life as we know it is unlikely to be the same after we come out of the pandemic. And this impact is probably going to be most evident in the social dimensions of everyday life. This crisis is also teaching us that the world is no longer operating under the same assumption. So we can no longer go ahead with the same way of functioning as before. The same rules no longer apply. The school does not function as it's like all of us working parents or all of us, we assume that the children go to school, they sit and study and they come back in the evening. We go to college and we study, and we go to hospital, we work. So all those normal rules of business no longer apply. And this crisis is characterized by uncertainties. I'm sure all of you are aware about the uncertainties that are currently going on with regard to the nature of the pandemic itself. What is the nature of virus? How it is going to behave? And there are so many theories that are going on about how it has happened, why it has happened, and how it will turn around as an over period of time. What are the cures and vaccines? So many theories that are going around, and the science is ever changing with regard to the pandemic. And parallelly, or sometimes more importantly, the politics and markets are extremely dynamic, and social movements are forming. Like, for example, we are all now more comfortable not speaking to each other as compared to our earlier, before pandemic period. So a lot of things are constantly changing. Some features that the pandemic psychosocial response that we look at as from a mental health point of view, in any pandemic generally, we can actually predict, we can have some epidemiological models, like though it may not be always accurate or always very realistic, but we can predict to some extent this is going to happen in this particular illness. COVID, to some extent, has challenged this epidemiological models also. Earlier, no one really knows what is going to happen at this point. But having some predictable models will give us some time. For example, if we look at the lockdown as a strategy, that has been done to buy some time with regard to preparing the healthcare system to manage the COVID, the morbidity associated with COVID. So we can actually, to some extent, if we are, if the correct epidemiological models are applied, to some extent we can predict some things. Now, a very important point for all of us as healthcare workers will be the mental health burden on all of us, as especially the frontline healthcare workers, like all of you who are working in COVID duties, or all of you who are daily coming into contact with a potentially positive patient who can be asymptomatic carrier also. So the mental health burden on each one of the frontline healthcare workers in any pandemic is more, and COVID has brought that into so much for a corporate, because the prevalence is so high. Every second patient could probably be an asymptomatic carrier. So we need to take, it is about being mindful about taking precautions all the time. The 24-hour alertness becomes extremely difficult, and that has its own mental health burden. Many years historically, if you are looking at the pandemics and infections and communicable diseases have been managed by quarantine and social distancing. As in, if you think about plague, the Black Death that happened in London many centuries ago, the Spanish flu that everyone is now talking about as a predecessor to COVID. On these, historically, all the pandemics and communicable diseases have been managed through state-run, state-level social distancing measures and quarantines and plague and cholera. Everything is quarantine. So for centuries this has been done, but then very little attention has been paid to. Also, humankind has a very very short memory. As in, all of us have very short memories, so we don't really learn from what has happened before. We have a tendency to think that now what is happening is it is now over, and then we forget about it and go on as we were doing before. We don't learn. So I think the history has not taught us much, and it is we have a senior professor in NIMHANS, Professor Ravi, who is an expert in virology. Sir, his favorite adage is that it is human behavior that has resulted in this virus. Virus is not to be blamed for the current jumping that he has been doing and the virus is doing. It's about human behavior who are invading spaces which humans are not allowed to invade. So that is the reason. So there are a lot of psychosocial implications for, so the behaviorally, unless and until we change our behavior, the COVID pandemic is probably going to take a long time to control, is what the experts say. The neuropsychiatric consequences of survivors, many of us who are positive, we really do not know what is going to be the long-term cognitive and behavioral consequences. So that is another thing that we need to be probably looking at. I am actually taking a little bit of time in contextualizing COVID before we go to children, because it is probably in the context of COVID that the mental health of children have become very important as of now. So I will just take a few more minutes to discuss about what the COVID pandemic is all about before we go into it. So some of the very important things that we also look at is in terms of behavior contagion, emotional epidemiology. All of us are doing so much of search to find out what is happening, what is the best thing to do, what are some of the precautions we need to do. Not all of us, generally the community is concerned so much, and fear and stigma are very high. So managing this becomes a very important dimension of pandemic response. And one thing that is very applicable to all of us will be also the precarious nature of healthcare facilities. Meaning to say that we generally, the public trust healthcare facilities to be a point of care. As in, you go to hospital when you are ill and you get better and come back home. Whereas now everyone is scared to go to hospital, and it becomes a node of transmission. But healthcare workers are not able to avoid going to hospital because you are part of the healthcare system. And that leads to a lot of burden, a lot of stress also. And you are also worried about whether I am going to hospital, I come back home, whether I am going to be a node of a carrier for my family, whether my family is going to be so there are a few things that are an outcome of this. One will be that the chronic disease management, as in regular healthcare, gets affected. We don't even go for immunization for the children. When there is a general illness, we don't go. So all these things, diabetes management, hypertension management, all these become a little bit on the backstage now. Everything is governed by COVID management. So that we really do not know what is the impact of that particular failure for chronic disease management. So these are all some things that we need to keep in mind when we are thinking about pandemic responses. So it's just quickly, I just want to say that, so COVID is not just COVID as a viral infection. It is a disease that has the potential for a significant influence on population, the way we do things. So the psychosocial impact is not just the patient and the relatives and the healthcare workers. It is also the government, the policies, the lockdown. They tell us not to go out. They tell us not to go home. One thing that when we work outside Kerala is that we would like to travel back home very often, which has not happened for the last 1 year or so. So all these curtailing of movements are very important part of this. So that has its own effect. And media becomes a very important factor in this. So this is not just one way or linear relationship. Large number of factors and variables and relationships are playing a role. And this relationship results in certain practices for us, which are social practices that emerge during the COVID pandemic that are related to spread of SARS-CoV. And some of these are primary practices, meaning to say that the testing that is happening, the government level, people going to home and doing a screening and surveillance and things like that. A lot of the governments have some primary practices, or even the public we keep looking at the WhatsApp messenger, we keep looking at the press releases to see how many cases are there. Some of our responses are also responsive. Practices are also responsive, meaning they say that there is a lockdown, so we need to look at it how best we will be able to move forward in terms of adapting our practices. So we have online platforms like this. Earlier, we used to have classes, physical classes. Now all conferences, all programs are in Zoom and online activities. So these are all the responsive practices. We are keeping our children at home. The children stay at home and they study online classes. These are all responses. The important thing is over a period of time, probably some of these are going to become adapted to our routine practice also. So some of our earlier practices are never going to come back. We may decide that part of our classes are going to be always online. So there are a lot of things that will become routinely integrated into our life. In general, disasters are having a lot of influence on mental health. And if you look at the history, always, whether it is natural disaster like tsunami and things like that, or biological disaster like Nipah virus and all these viruses, any of these things are associated with increased emotional health needs. Some are clinical level, some are subclinical level of distress and things like that, but some are also clinical level like post-traumatic stress disorder. And having these responses lead to certain vulnerabilities that are associated with this. So society cannot ignore this, that something has happened, biomedical event has happened, and it has resulted in some psychological responses, and the social society or social life is going to change after this. That is something that we need to be very clear about. We have a lot of stigma related issues. We do not really say that we have, it's like if you would remember the HIV stigma, people don't come out and say they have HIV because people will be stigmatized, and that results in delay in taking treatment. And that will lead to further disability. So that is also applicable in corona illness and the psychosocial burden. We also have, unfortunately, in our country, we are a community or a society who are a bit low on civic sense, meaning to say that if the government is telling us to stay at home, we tend to rebel after a particular point of time. We don't want to stay at home. So the civic social responsible behavior is a little bit on the low side, and that has resulted in a resurgence of cases. But then, having said that, it is also important for us to have alternatives. Like, for example, if a daily wage earner, a migrant worker who does not go for work for 2 or 3 months, he does not have food to give to his children. So naturally, the lockdown is not going to have an effect on him. However much the government and police is trying to enforce it, somehow he has to go out. So we need to have a balancing of how these strategies can actually be useful for the larger society. A very important dimension which also has an influence on children and their mental health is the social media and the spread of information that is happening. All of us have moved from, even if the last 10 years, we have all become so much involved in internet and different media, and we depend upon media for a lot of internet for a lot of information, and so much so that during coronavirus COVID pandemic, the WHO has described it as an infodemic more than a pandemic. That much of problems are being spread by the social media. And it is important for us to be very judicious with regard to what information we get in social media also. The effect on different sections of the society, the vulnerable population, as we all know, children, who is the focus of our discussion today, the elderly, chronic illness, and other migrant daily wage workers. Also, a very paradox of this situation is also about to talk about home quarantine. But what if a person does not have a home? What are the alternatives available for them? So all these things are important for us to look at. Now we come a little late, but then we come to children. Children are vulnerable, we all know. And how has the COVID influenced the children? Basically, we are talking about children who do not have any other illness, children who are able to manage their life. We are not talking about disability or any other illness. We are talking about normal children. So all of us, all our children are now less physically active. They have much longer screen time. The school conducts online classes. So they have to attend classes through phone, smartphones or laptop or tablet or whatever. So they do have much longer screen time. That leads to, because they are there all the time at home, irregular sleep patterns and less favorable diets. This resulting in weight gain and loss of cardiovascular fitness, leading to long-term chronic illness. We really do not know what is the effect of this particular event, consequences in terms of health, and very importantly, mental health, because children need to have normal developmental opportunities. Social interactions are very important for development of a child. All of us know that. So when they are at home and they are encouraged to interact with their peers, what is happening to their mental health? We need to wait it out to see what is going to be the long-term effect of the current strategies, the current lockdown and the difficulties in the development and mental health of children. But as of now, we know that all these changes, that their physical activities are going to lead to further chronic illness and things like that. Also, there is the direct and indirect impact of closure of schools. Schools are closed, and that leads to a lot of difficulties with regard to continuity of education. There's a lot of uncertainty, especially this is more for people who are children who are in transition, like 10th standard to 11th standard and 11th to 12th standard to any higher education they are going. There's a lot of uncertainty and delay that is happening. We really do not know. They say that the next March or April there will be a little better news, but as of now it doesn't look how, I mean, we really do not know. So that uncertainty and its impact on academic performance and the future expectations also has a lot of difficult this thing. One thing that all of us who are working and who are not working are being exposed to is also unintended child care obligations, meaning to say that all of us make some arrangements for child care, but then COVID has made a lot of changes, and now the maids are not coming. We are sending all the maids home, and we are not sending the children to daycare. So this, all these childcare obligations are unprepared for, and that has its own influence. So what it leads to, because of all these factors, the children generally tend to have, generally itself, children have high emotional needs. And how do we tackle it? How do we meet these emotional needs? Children, it is important for us to be sensitive to the psychological distress. And this may not be, they may not always come and tell us, I am feeling sad or I am feeling anxious. They may, but they may not also. So we need to be very sensitive to observe the children, like whether they are acting out in a different way. Each child is different. So some of them may be totally silent, whereas some of them may actually express their anger and hyperactivity and tantrums and things like that. So we need to be patient and we need to understand what they are going through. And we should also be sensitive that all emotions are valid. Whether we are anxious or not, the children, whatever experience, whatever emotions they express are valid, and we need to listen to them and try to understand them at least. It is very important. And sometimes playing with the child and drawing with the child can also help us to reach out to the child. We may not know that why a child is being very silent. We do not know why the child is silent. So if you ask them, they may not say, they may just shrug and go away. So you try to engage with the child, you try to play with the child, and that is going to facilitate the process of trying to understand what the child is going through and what are their emotional needs. Also, as much as possible, keeping a regular routine is very important. And that will also help us to understand what is the emotional need, because a child who is every day getting up in the morning and brushing and doing whatever a positive activity, like maybe drawing or playing and things like that, suddenly if the child stops doing all these things, that is actually a red flag for us. We should look at changes in schedule. If the child is refusing to get up from the cot, or the child is refusing to probably eat properly. So all these things are red flags for us to understand, okay, the child is, and we need to explore it further. So in terms of COVID, in this context, it is also important that if the child in some way has come into contact with a COVID positive person, there need not be stigma, there need not be singled, they need not be singled out, and reassurance becomes very important. And very, very important for all of us, and also for the child, is to avoid watching, reading, listening too much news about COVID-19. All of us should stop looking at TV and WhatsApp and things like that beyond a point. But it's very important for the child because children are very impressionable, and it is important that they don't get exposed to it may not be very correct, untruthful also, or very sensitizing events and news also. If someone in the family is sick and have been taken to hospital, the child should be spoken about. Child, all of us, we consider children as children, as a meaning to say that they don't understand what adults say and what adults go through. It is not so. Children are very smart. Children probably understand more than what we think that they do understand. So that is important for us to give them that space to speak to them and look at what they really think. So how can we try to address these needs? In simple manner, in simple words, it's as simple as listening to the child, giving the child opportunity to talk about what they are feeling, and encouraging them to share their concerns, and provide simple tools to comfort. Like for example, just spending some time with the child alone is enough to comfort them, rather than all of us who are going out for work and coming back. We will be very tired, but I think it is important for the child will be at home all the time. So when we go out and come back also, it is important for us to consciously try to have some time so that to spend with them, so that that comforts them a lot, and also look at, speak to them, talk to them. That becomes very important, and reassure them about what are the things that they're doing, and then they are safe and things like that. Providing correct information, providing the right information at the right time is very important. As parents, we would like to protect our children from all the problems that are happening, and we want children to do the best that they can and reach to the far heights and things like that. In times of crisis like COVID, the best lesson that we can give them also is lesson of resilience, that the things may not always go the way we want, and what are some of the ways in which they can actually build their resilience and get on with their crisis. This lesson is going to be invaluable for them in future, as they go through life's different trials and tribulations. Having said that, there may also be, the earlier slides are about normal situations wherein a subclinical level of needs are there, which all of us need to tackle. But sometimes we may also find that there is psychological distress that requires specialized care, that some children will require more, they may have severe mental health issues due to the pandemic. And this can actually be understood through some changes, such as difficulties in sleeping and eating, nightmares, and behaviors that are very different from what they were before, like being withdrawn and aggressive. And you will also find that as nursing professionals will be very familiar with the concept, like the children tend to complain of pain more, even when they are very upset. So the pain, the location will be more about stomach pain. Stomach pain, headaches are very common without having any organic cause for this, in which case, if there is no organic cause for a stomach pain and chest headache, we need to look at it, whether the child is upset about something and whether there is a lot of psychological disturbance. Fears, also the changes, like a child who has been very bold, a child who does a lot of things alone, suddenly starts having fears and say that they are afraid to be left alone, and starts behaving very clingy, depending behaviors. And new fears, like for example, my daughter will say that now I don't want to be alone in the room. and I am very afraid of dark. Please switch on the light there, then only I will go there. So these are all the new fears that the children will develop, and also decreased interest in playing. Earlier, the activities that were very engaging for the child, now the child has stopped doing that. And being sad and crying for no apparent reason. These are all some of the things that acts again as red flags for us that should actually ensure that we should seek specialized care for the child's emotional distress. Okay, so the next few slides are guidelines published by the UNICEF Every Child. It's a very interesting document, a very useful document. It's freely available in the website. It's important for all of us, and also when you are actually working with a child in your own working environments, probably it is very important for us to give these tips to the parents during COVID, not just in any pandemic. And according to the virology specialists, pandemics are going to be more in future because of human behavior again. So I think what we learned during COVID becomes very important lesson for us in our future pandemics and future disasters that we are going to encounter also. One thing that this guideline talks about is about the quality time that we spend with the child. That setting aside time to spend with the child, asking the child what they would like to do, what can we do together becomes very important. It doesn't matter that you're just sitting. You may be tired after the work, and you're going to be you just want to lie down and things like that. You lie down with the child, let the child be there, and let the child do something. So spend that time, quality time with the child, do something together. Just take the child outside for a walk or something like that. So all these things become very important for us, spending time with the child. And we should also remember that the children imitate parents a lot, and they should we should act what we want them to do. And if we want to say positive, if we want them to be positive, we need to stay positive. That is very important. Using positive words, like rather than don't make a mess, we should be able to say that please keep your toys neatly and things like that. So using the words in the right manner and praising the child when they're behaving well, and being very real, like don't make a reasonable deposit. And these are all things that will help them. Also, having a structure is very important. Having a routine, not just for children, for all of us, having a consistent daily routine becomes very important. And make all the precautions that we are talking about in COVID to be a fun activity. That's something that we do together. Hand washing should become a fun activity for the child. So these things are very important. We should also give honest information and clear information to the child. Answer the questions when asking why are you not coming home and you are having night duty or whatever. Tell them truth. And because there is a pandemic happening and I'm going to bring infection home, so I want to stay away for some time so that you are all right. When one of the problems healthcare workers go through is that the sudden quarantines that will come up, like we may, without knowingly, we may come to exposure at some point, and then we'll be asked to go on quarantine, and then the children will be worrying what is happening to us. So it is important to answer the questions truthfully and tell them clearly what is to be expected. More care is needed when there is a potential for abuse, when there is high stress in the family due to social isolation, financial problems, loss of livelihood, which are all very, very, very real threats in the current situation. And that actually increases the risk for domestic violence and child abuse. That is a very important area we need to be sensitive to when you see a child in your clinic, in the hospital, who looks as though there could be a potential domestic violence or child abuse in this. Sexual abuse, for example. These are all things that we need to be very sensitive about as healthcare workers and seek help whenever because the studies recently are showing that there is increased incidence of domestic violence and child sexual abuse, child abuse because of this lockdown and closures and movement restrictions. So it is important for us to be sensitive to it. And also the children with disabilities and other illnesses that you as pediatric population whom you will be encountering, we need to be very sensitive to their needs, because they are not like any other children where they can access information very easily. So we need to take more care and speak to them more and give them the space to talk more for children with a disability. So these are some examples of how best we can tell our children. I'm sure you all know this, and there is no need for me to go into this. Just some pictorial representation. There are lots of information like this available in the net, but it is very important for us to use the age appropriate, useful information. Okay, one final point that I want to share is about the gadgets, about the phone, use of phone and tablets. See, we cannot avoid it, and children are also in conflict, because we are telling the children that you attend online classes, you give them phone to attend classes, and when you make a distinction between attending online classes and playing, sometimes the children do not really get it. So you need to probably be very clear, and reasonable requests need to be made with regard to screen time also. But especially for a little older children, making them aware about online safety becomes very important. The world out there is not at all safe for children. So it is important that they know where are the boundaries, and you know what is happening, what the child is doing online. So together, at least a few minutes, if we can spend with the child to see what are the regular sites that the child is visiting, what are the normal, usual activities that the child is engaged in online. These are some things that will be helpful. As much as possible, the children should be, do not allow the children to close their door and sit and use internet. This has to be in a common area like the living room. And parental controls are a very useful tool when we go for work and when we are not having physical presence to control the child's online presence. We should be able to have the parental controls and teach the kids never to use shared personal information. These are all golden rules that, earlier we used to talk about sexual abuse and physical abuse as very important thing. Now everything has been migrated into online abuse and cyberbullying and things like that. So we need to have, now there is a need for new literacy, new campaigns to ensure that the children know where are the boundaries in cyber spaces. And privacy settings are very important, that make sure that the children know that. And also encourage the children to delete requests from, they should not respond to strangers, whatever be the social media platform they are looking at. Always set a time limit. Use of mobiles and internet can actually be limited by time, whatever be the purpose that they are using. Also have a routine that incorporates physical activities along with this. Also tell them to strictly not to click. One major problem that happens in internet is they should not really click on any pop-ups or ads that are coming in. These are all things that we need to convey. Whether the children will do it or not is secondary. But what we should do is to tell them that we need to ensure that they get the information. Whether it comes into practice or not is something that we need to just, take a chance on. Okay, so I will conclude with this by saying that there are a lot of problems and we are struggling with new normal. We really do not know where we are going. But having said that, there is a lot of possibility for growth. As I said, the adaptive pandemic practices, the way in which we do things, the way in which we manage our crisis, the way in which we learn new ways of living. These are all potential possibility of post-traumatic growth, and we are on the way to developing a lot of community resilience. Things are not going to be the same. Our children are not going to grow up in the same environment. Anyway, it has never been the same environment, but the COVID has made sure that the change has been very dramatic. So we never know what is going to happen in the next academic year also. So we need to build in skills in our children that they are able to meet these needs. And always the pandemics and epidemics have resulted in major social changes, like the way we approach things, and the way, like for example, the hand washing could probably become a very, very major behavioral pattern in future. Hopefully it does, so that the hygiene also becomes improved. So what I just wanted to leave you with is that our children are, yes, they are going through a lot of difficult situations, but it is also a time for learning. It's also a time for them to become better and become stronger communities. This is the message that we should give them. We should keep talking to them. We should reason with them so that they become much, much stronger individuals and are able to deal with their problems in future. Thank you very much. I think I will stop here. I don't know whether I have overshot the time, but then yeah, thank you so much for your patient listening. I am actually happy to take any questions if you have any. So I'll stop sharing, Sister Anita.
Yes, madam. Dear delegates, the beginning, we are extremely sorry for the interruption caused due to the internet connectivity issues at the beginning. And thank you, Dr. Priya Teresa Thomas, Associate Professor, Department of Social Work in NIMHANS. And we couldn't introduce you at the beginning. So Dr. Priya did her master's in social work from Rajagiri College of Social Sciences and PhD in psychiatric social work from NIMHANS, Bangalore. She is rendering her services to neurologically ill and is involved in clinical, teaching, and research areas. She has several publications and ongoing research activities in these areas, and she is guiding doctoral research students in related fields. So once again, we express our heartfelt gratitude to you, dear Madam Priya Teresa Thomas. Thank you, Madam. Now, dear delegates, we will move on to the next session, and it will be dealt by Dr. Riaz from Government College of Nursing, Thrissur. And now I invite Mrs. Teresa Joseph, Associate Professor, Department of Child Health Nursing from St. Joseph College of Nursing, to introduce the resource person for the next session. Over to you, Mrs. Teresa.
Thank you, sister, and good morning. Dear participants, we are going to have the second session of webinar, that is COVID-19, its impact on nursing personnel. To speak on this, we have with us Dr. Riaz KM, Assistant Professor, Government College of Nursing, Thrissur. He started his journey in nursing profession from Government College of Nursing, Kozhikode, and completed MSc Nursing from Nittaya Usha Institute of Nursing Sciences, Mangalore, and acquired PhD from INC Consortium. He is a great contributor for nursing profession, especially for mental health nursing, through various publications and online sessions, even through YouTube channel. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation, and we are waiting for your session. Hearty welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share some of my experience with all of you. Very happy to be here with you all. Thank you. Hope the slides are clear and visible for you, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So COVID-19, how I am living with, what I am learning from, why I am leading for. It's a complex situation, like what is mentioned in this slide. living with COVID. I am traveling from Aliwa to. Hello. Okay. Daily I am traveling from Aliwa to Thrissur. Any problem? Hello. Can you hear me? Hope I am audible to you.
Yes, sir. It's audible here.
Okay. Thank you. So from morning 6:30, I am leaving from your home. When I stepping to the road, I am starting my journey from my home to my working place in Thrissur. So I am reaching Aluva. There I am getting into one common vehicle. Around 9 to 10 people are there in that vehicle. So there is a possibility my COVID is sitting near to me. When I am getting to my college, I am meeting with a lot of people, lot of my co-authors. Again, there is a possibility that COVID virus is in front of me, left to me, right to me, back to me, over me, beneath me, everywhere. So I am living with the COVID. What I am learning from COVID, yes, from the first day when we hear about COVID, that was in Wuhan, China, it was far away from my home, far away from my working place. But I never thought of getting that virus very close to me like this, in front of me, side to me, left to me, right to me, left to me, and back to me. So from that point onwards, I started learning about this virus. And the learning process is going on. Even today morning also, I searched something for latest update related to this COVID. Again, I am leading, being a health professional, being a nurse educator, I am leading the entire nursing team, not in the in aspect of that pure caring aspect, but I am my nursing profession. What all capabilities are there for me? What are my faculties that I can contribute for the betterment? So these three things are happening. That is why I am calling it as a 3L challenge: living challenge, learning challenge, and leadership challenge. Yes, listen, living challenge. Why? Because in order to live today, I adjust my routine. I need to adjust my life according to latest information regarding COVID pandemic. Yes, I am learning. It's a challenge because a lot of informations are pouring day by day. If you open the net, latest information are there, but I don't know how much of this information is valid one, how much of this information are genuine one. So it's a challenge to learn what exactly.
അറിയില്ല.
Hello.
കേൾക്കില്ലേ ജോലി? എവിടാ?
Hello.
റോസ ആന്റി ഇന്നലെ പറഞ്ഞേ അവര് ആ മറ്റേ ഇപ്പുറത്തെ വീട് കിട്ടുന്നില്ലേ?
Hello.
It causes disturbance. Please mute yourself.
Okay, it's a learning challenge because I don't know exactly what exactly is happening with COVID. Yesterday, I made a call because I have to, as a routine work, I need to call many of these patients who are inside our hospital. Around 90 patients are there for me to call. Around 500 to 600 patients are admitted in our hospital. Our hospital is a COVID hospital. Yesterday, one call I made. Both the mother and his son is admitted inside our hall, inside our hospital, and both are positive. Yesterday, son become negative. Then he started thinking. Today, I was happy. I was normal because I am positive. My mother is also positive. Mother is bedridden. Now onwards, what to do, sir? Actually, I don't have any answer. Can I say, no, you won't get the COVID again? And he is telling so much of his psychological problem, social issues. None of them I may not be able to solve based on my capability. So I have to learn day by day. There are new challenges. So it's a challenge, learning challenge, of course, leadership challenge. Yesterday, the same thing happened. A nursing officer called me and asked me to take some sessions related to psychological support for our few of our head nurses who are very reluctant to do this patient care because they are affected with the COVID. They don't know exactly the situation. So leadership challenge is there. So every nursing personnel, based on their capability, at their level, they are facing this.
Yes.
Please mute yourself.
So if you are a nurse, you have 3L challenge. If you are a person who belongs to this public group, you may only have this living challenge. Being a health professional, being a nurse, I have these 3 challenges. So we need to address this 3L challenge. Then only we can proceed, we can progress. So for that, I have one framework. Simple framework. It's a complexity of science framework. In that, 4 aspects are there. Complicated experts. Yes, experts are nowadays making things complicated in the sense new informations are coming. Day before yesterday, I entered into one performer for collecting data related to these patients whom to I am making calls. Yesterday, the form changed. New information I need to collect and upload. It is not their fault because updating is coming up and we need to fill up all these things. So that is why these experts are complicated. That is that aspect of complicated expert. I can explain this complicated expert for 1 hour, but I am not going to that because my topic is something else. Then simple best practice. We need to identify what is the best practice. As a nurse, I need to identify what is the best practice. How far it is possible, I don't know. Yesterday, 2 nurses were working with 90 patients, 90 bed patients, and plus 23 patients on floor in our hospital. What I am saying, those who are affected with the COVID, how 2 staff nurses can work this many hours or this many, how these staff nurses can care for this many patients. So from the practice, evidence-based practice, what we are supposed to do, I can identify n number of evidences. So I must select the simple best practice so that our nurses can use that knowledge, skill for our patients so that they can be in a better position to fight with this COVID. So that is associated like this. Then of course, chaotic rapid response. A nurse who is working inside the hospital, who are caring a patient inside the hospital, who is caring a patient inside the home at any time, the symptoms can worse. The symptom can make it go for a complexity. So definitely, the person who is carrying these patients may be in a position to say chaotic rapid response. That is the apt situation where a nurse is right now placed. Of course, complicated experts is leading to complex emergence. How to identify the simple best practice? What are the hidden problems that a nurse can face during the process of achieving that best practice is the discussion of today's session. We'll move on to that. So we can see what are the potential stress reaction a nurse is facing. Currently I am starting study that is funded by that is regarding nurses empowerment. How nurses we can empower the nurses. For doing that study, I conducted a small pilot study, and based on that pilot study, I could find out certain potential stress reactions. This was around 2 or 3 months back. Now the things are little more complicated. We'll see what are the potential stress reactions a nurse is facing. A nurse who is working with the COVID patients are facing anxiety, drop in confidence level, helplessness, dealing with the anger. Yes, the person who is working with the COVID patients are nowadays experiencing severe anxiety. Anxiety related to one's own health and well-being and others' health and well-being. A nurse, he or she himself is in he or she is himself is experiencing anxiety because he is or she is concerned about their health. Anytime they can get the COVID. At any time, coronavirus can enter into our body, and that is a concern. That makes anxiety in that individual. And others' health also. The person who is working is concerned about their family members with whom they are spending their life. They are concerned about what will happen for their family members. So they are concerned. The anxiety of nurses who are working currently in many of these hospitals are experiencing anxiety because of these two reasons. Then drop in confidence level. Yes, initially the confidence level was a little bit low, but as the things were progressing, the confidence level of individuals who are caring these patients climbed up, but the things are changing now. The confidence levels are coming back. It's like a normal curve, like initially it was low, then went up, now it is coming back. It is because they are not being able to function effectively. They know a lot of things now. They can do a lot of things. Being a nurse, it is the nurses who can work effectively that we know. But nurses who are currently in the forefront, who are fighting with this COVID, are experiencing this problem that being not able to function and system is affected. Yes, we can very well say in initial stage, our health department was fighting with this COVID very effectively. The number of cases per day for 2 digits, 3 digits. Now you can assume where we are standing right now. The system was effective, but now system is affected. It is effective, but it is affected. That is the problem. That helplessness. The nurses who are working with COVID are experiencing helplessness. As you know, this is the main sign that we can see in a person who is with a depression. Yes, majority of nurses who are working, who are fighting, are experiencing this helplessness. Very near future, they can move on to this depression. Helplessness, why? Because feeling loss of control. They cannot control anything. Number of patients they cannot control, symptoms they cannot control, concern of patients they cannot control, family members they cannot control, even telephonic inquiry to that ward they cannot control. They are getting calls from family members, they are getting calls from their colleagues, they are getting calls from those who are doing this psychosocial counseling, they are getting calls from even from press, authorities. How they can work? Two nurses who are working with the 90 patients. So there is, of course, there is a feeling loss of control. We need to address that issue. Then being exhausted. Initially, we were getting, if you work for 7 days, you will get quarantine. Now things are changed. There will not be that much. Government is forced to do Hello. Okay. Now government is forced to do like that only because resources are coming down. Expert who can fight with this COVID is number is declining because many are affected with the COVID. Fortunately or unfortunately, very few are already affected. See how things are going. So that means nurses who are working, the nurses who are in the forefront are experiencing this helplessness. Then dealing with anger, they are frustrated, they are stressed. Definitely, there can be chance of this anger outbursts. Others' actions are putting self and others in danger. That is very well known to our state. Why this number of cases in Kerala is escalated when compared with other states? We were in a safe position. Now the things change only because of our public, only because of you and me. It is because of our system. If you go to a grocery shop, there is crowd. If you go to fish market, there is crowd. During Sundays, if you go to meat market, there is crowd. We celebrated Onam, excellent way. Moreover, we celebrate, I said it is celebrating strikes. Yes, politics needed, but at the time of crisis like this, we are celebrating this strike also. At the end, everything collapsed. It is the nurses, it is the healthcare professionals who are working in the hospital, who are there in the community. They have to fight, and day by day, numbers are increasing. When I started counseling for these patients, initially it was 27. Now the number gone up to 90. Their patients are there, family members are there. Even family members are not getting information. So if the number is escalating like this, how a nurse can work, how a nurse can provide care. So this makes that others' actions are putting self and others in danger. Putting these others' actions are putting me in danger. Others' actions are putting these nurses in danger. So that makes me anger. That makes a nurse anger. That is why happens this dealing with anger. That is the potential stress reaction. Then grief and depression. I already told you. People are experiencing, nurses are experiencing helplessness. It is because loss of life in front of their eyes. We can see people are dying. We cannot do anything. Yesterday, one patient died at the age of 38 without any comorbidities. Even they cannot do any simple intervention. What we can do? So loss of life, loss of health. One of my friend who is working in Trivandrum Nursing College, yesterday I called her. She was affected with this COVID. She's very active. She's young. And yesterday when I called, she was saying she cannot climb steps. Even though she don't have any physical problem, after COVID, she's experiencing lack of energy. She's not able to breathe properly. So loss of health is a major concern. Loss of time. Previously, we were working for 8 hours. Now, entire 24/7 we are working. There is no leisure time. People are exhausted. So loss of time is there. Loss of resources. How much resources our government is spending to check the progress of this COVID. So resources are exhausting. Abilities. I can do a lot of things, but everything is focusing on this COVID. So loss of abilities are there. Loss of attitude. Now people's attitude change. Initially, in lockdown period, or people were so much concerned about we were inside the home. Now where is that attitude? These attitudinal changes make this problem. Then connection. I'm not able to maintain that connection. Of course, online connections are possible. It's a potential stress reaction. Loss of plan. One of my colleague who planned for some Singapore trip was not able to, and it's a problem for depression and grief. It's a fact. A lot of plans were regarding daughter's marriage, son's marriage, siblings' marriage. A lot of plans were there. Everything went on. It is because of this, and that makes a nurse who is working with this COVID potential stress reactions, and they are experiencing. Then guilty feeling. Another important finding. What I could could get from this nurses who are fighting with this COVID is fear of illness. They are expressing fear of illness, loss of resources, death of themselves. See, at any time I can get COVID. If I am getting COVID, 0.38% is the death rate in Kerala. If 1,000 is getting, of course, 3 may die. If 1,000 health professionals are getting, of course, 3 of this health person can die. So that can happen. That is a guilt feeling. It is sad. Nothing can. So that feeling also I could elicit from the nurses who are working with these COVID patients. Not able to do as much as one wants to do. I want to do a lot of things, but I cannot. The resources are limited. The possibilities are limited. The system is that much constrained with the lack of resources. So not able to do as much as I want. Not wanting to work, care for others because of fear. Fear. Yes, many nurses, when they are posted for this COVID duty, initially they were affected with it. They were concerned about their health, so they don't want to work. I know many nurses who are working in some institutions, they don't want to, they quit job only because of this fear, not doing enough because not feeling empathy. Yes, that feeling of empathy is going from the nurses. It is not because of their fault, it is because of the exhaustion, exhaust system. It is because of the lack of resources. It is because of the number of hours they want to work. The empathy is losing. As a result, they are doing activities mechanically. If a nurse is working mechanically, definitely there can be a problem. Empathy is the major thing that a nurse should have. If empathy is losing, that humane touch is losing from the nursing profession, it's a danger thing. We need to tackle that. Not coping as well as one want to. I'm not able to cope with the situation. I am working in the COVID hospital. Minor things are frustrating me. Minor issues from the families are affecting me. That means not coping effectively. And we need peer support. Why? Yes, peer support is a major thing. Most of the nurses experiencing trauma, loss, moral problems, fatigues, and many are unlikely to seek help. Facilities are there, counseling services are there, but no one is using, or majority are not using because they are in a state of freeze stage. Yeah, they are really freezed. That is the right word we can use. We might have not, learned about fight or flight. We can fight with COVID or we can flight with COVID. Now our nurses are in that third F, that is freezed stage, low, reduced empathy. It is not because of their problem, it is because of the load what they are carrying right now. And of course there is maladaptive coping among nurses. Why peer support is important? Because there is depersonalization. They are not communicating effectively with their peers. Somehow I need to finish my job. Somehow I need to finish the. Somehow I need to get sleep. That is the major thing. But they are not able to finish their job effectively. They are not able to sleep effectively. That is the situation. That is why I said they are facing a problem like helplessness. Then many of our nurses are experiencing
Participants, please mute your microphone. Please mute yourself.
Yeah, Prajwal. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So in order to tackle this issue, there is one effective model that we can use. I think he is traveling and he is using this mobile phone for that one. That may be the reason he is not aware about what he is doing. Okay, thank you. So stress first aid model, SFA model, is effective for dealing this issue, for dealing the issue of stress among our nurses. We can say it as 7 action C's, 7 C's. We'll see one by one. 7 C's: check, coordinate, cover, calm, connect, competence, and confidence. So these are the 7 C's. These are the 7 C's of first aid as per stress first aid model. It is effectively useful for nursing professional. It is effectively useful for police personnel. It is effectively useful for military, fire and rescue, and rest of the healthcare professionals. So we can see one by one. Check. We need to check how much a person is in this situation of how much this crisis is affecting them. Assess, observe, and listen. So when the person is experiencing any of this stress, any of this problem, assess how much it is affecting. Check. Observe. Simple observation will give you a clear information related to how much it is affecting that individual. Listen. That's the main problem. Nobody is there to listen. When they communicate their inability to their superiors, superiors are in a position not to attend that information or that talk. They are busy with something. They want to report. The reporting system is extensive in our system. Nurse has to report. Head nurse has to report. Head nurse has to report to nursing superintendent, nursing officer to medical college principal to collector, and of course medical college principal to DME, director of medical education. The reporting system is there. If that reporting system is not working effectively, they will get the call. But who are there in the grassroots, who are working with the patients, when they care the patients, they will get a call, and they need to attend that call. So nobody is there to listen their concern. This is my problem. To whom they will share? If she is able to share their concern with their family members, no. They are also in stress. So try to assess, observe, and listen the person who is in stress, that is nurses. Coordinate. A person who is working can get help and refer if needed. Many a time, nurses need this reference services right now. By default, my thought was like that initially. The nurses who are working in our setup are physically strong and of course psychologically strong. But recently, this head nurses and nursing officer called me and they need help. I told you yesterday, day before yesterday, head nurses need help because they are in tremendous stress. So coordinate, get help and refer if needed. Cover, go for safety. Of course, PPE. If you wear this PPE, any PPE, in the COVID situation, it is PPE. If you are working in the military, get that cover. That is what? Get cover. Then calm. Lot of possibilities are there where we can get calmness, relaxation, slow down, refocus. Slow down is very important. If you go in a great pace, the pace will accelerate. It is like moving a car in a clear highway. So once we started with this one, things go on accelerating. It won't work here because we don't know how much we need to travel. It may be 1 month. Initially, it was for like 3 months. Then the possibilities are 6 months. Now 1 year is getting nearby. Now doctors are even scientists are saying it may go 2 years, and some are saying it will be never-ending process. That is also possible because new mutations are taking place in the virus. That is also possible. So we need to change our strategies. So calmness is very important. Slowing down is important. Going with the pace is not the solution. If you go with that pace, we will get exhausted. The system is can affect. I already told you, system is effective, but it is affected. Then refocus. Initially, our focus was containment. Now our strategy is moving to reverse quarantine. So refocus is important. So as a nurse, our perspective also need to be changed. Refocus, then connect, get support from others, connect with the nature, connect with the superiors, connect with others. Of course, by keeping that social distancing, that is important. Connect, competence, building their competence, building their skills. Initially, we were with zero stations with no knowledge, but luckily for our Kerala states, there was one luck was there for us, especially those who are working in government sector. That was in Nipah. Of course, the flood, the massive flood that happened in our Kerala, it was a blessing for us in this health sector because there was effective disaster management system, and that effective disaster management system functioned effectively. That was the success that we got initially, but the things went on from our hand. So definitely that competence building, and it is happening even now. Training sessions are there for nursing personnel. All nursing colleges are nowadays coordinating. Our nursing teachers are coordinating this training program in all 7 government nursing colleges, and they are coordinating care. They are involved with this infection control. What I'm trying to, it will improve this competence. It will increase the competence of the nurses who are working with the patients. And confidence building. Be with them. There are a lot of resources with you. People are with you. We can fight. We. That we feeling, we definitely improve the confidence. So If you want to do a stress testing for working with the COVID, we can have the 7 C's. If you remember the 7 C's, that is the best thing that we can do, and we can overcome this issue. Then self-care obstacles. I already told you, in order to get a better product, the person who is caring should have a better state of mental state, a better state of physical health. So what I found during my study was this self-care obstacles, attitudinal problem expressed by nurses. These are the attitudinal statement I collected from nurses. It would be selfish to take a break. Yes, there are nurses who express this word. If I take break, that is selfish activity. So that is the attitude what they have, but it is wrong. They can take break. They should take break. There should be break, because if you work without any break, he will collapse. She will collapse. How far she can run? I already told you it may go up to 2 years or beyond. How long we can run with this? So you can take break. So this is what I observed, what I collected from the nurses. It would be selfish if I take break. So there are nurses who are working with the patient without taking off, without taking any off. That can be, we can see. Then others are working hard, so I should. That is another thing. Others who are working with me are working hard. How can I go back? How can I take break? That is also there. If others are working, that is based on their capacity. I'm not saying you should not work. You should take break. You should empower yourself. You should recharge yourself. Otherwise, you will go for exhaustion, burnout syndrome. If I need to speak on this burnout syndrome, I can speak at least 2 or 3 hours. That our nurses are experiencing only because of this attitude. Others are working hard, so I should. I am okay. I am fine. I am not even tired. That is another thing that I got from nurses. I am okay. I am fine. I am not tired, so I should. Yes, it's good to feel full of energy, but it won't last because it's a long run. It's a marathon. We just started the race. We don't know how many kilometers we need to run. So be careful regarding that. The need of others whom I support is more than what is that of my own. The patient who is lying in front of me, their need is important compared to me. That we can see in some of nurses. It is also dangerous. It's an attitudinal obstacle for self-care. I am not doing enough. Right now, I am doing, but this is not enough. I need to do more. That is the type of attitude I could get in some. That is also dangerous. I can contribute more by working more. Yes, I need to contribute. I am a health professional. I need to contribute a lot for our public. Our country needs us. Yes, of course. But for that, I need to work more. That is the attitude I could see in someone. I don't want anybody to know how I am affected with it. That is also there. I am affected. I am tired. I am exhausted. But I don't want anybody to notice how much I am tired, how much I am affected. That is another attitudinal problem I could see. Then only I can do all these things. Yes, that is a basic thing we nurses learn from our first year of nursing program. Nurses can do a lot. We are the angels, but many a time we will forget we are human beings. We are also with blood and flesh. So people are saying only I can do, only nurses can do, only healthcare professionals can do. No, yes, that is true. But the thing is, they need break. So these are some of the obstacles, that is attitudinal obstacles I could see among nurses. Then self-care obstacle, behavioral. That is also I could see. Working too long. That may be because of a nurse's problem. That can be because of the system problem. Initially, there were enough break and enough break in between the shift. As the number of cases increased, they have to work long. So, and there are nurses who are working long as an obstacle for or behavioral obstacle for self-care. They won't get enough time to take their own self-care activity. The recharging process is not working. If you use a mobile, Daily you need to charge it. Otherwise, it won't work. That working too long, we can see as an behavioral obstacles for self-care. Keeping stress to oneself. They are not ventilating their issue. If you keep up this one, it's like a pressure cooker now. If that vent is not working, if you are not communicating effectively what is going on in their mind, the stress will build up. They will reach a stage there can be a breakdown. So that is also the inflexibility. That is mainly I could see among a little bit higher authorities. Inflexibility. If you are doing like this, do like this. This is the format we need. No, that should not work. That won't work. We need to have that flexibility. And I could see this inflexibility among some nurses who are working with the patients also. Then relying on alcohol. Very few. Some of the nurses. I could see that is happened in our Kerala. Some of nurses, I'm not saying any gender difference. Some nurses working in our setup are excessively using this alcohol. It's a abnormal coping mechanism, as you already know. Then be a force multiplier. How to deal with this? So many problems are expressed. How we can solve this? How we can deal with teamwork, respect each other, give recognition, reorganize things. So these are the 4 things and we can do to counteract this problem. To some extent, I'm not saying fully we can overcome all these problems. But if you adopt these 4 things, definitely, apart from that first aid, 7 C's, this you can use for force multiplying. If you multiply the force currently using for fighting with this COVID, teamwork is effective. You can add new members to this team. Even volunteers, nowadays our government is adding these volunteers. Their energy can also use. Nurses can only focus on this caring process. If somebody is there to enter this data into computer, it is not a must for a nurse to add that one. Of course, we need to check the authenticity of information, confidentiality of information, that is there. But if somebody can help, they can focus on their care. Teamwork is an effective way with which we can improve or we can rule out all these issues what we discussed. Respect each other. Nowadays, it is there. There is some respect for nurses. But among our nurses who are working directly in patient and who are doing some non-COVID activity, there is a clash. But we need to fight that one. Everybody is now focusing on a same goal. When we play chess, everybody is not going for friend. There are a backup. There is a backup. At a period of crucial situation, at a period of crisis, others who are powerful, who is working backside can also come and attack the enemy. Now the enemy is specific, but it is full of power. As a team only we can work, and among the team members there should be some respect, give recognition. Yes, we need that recognition. We are lacking, what nurses are lacking today is recognition. Of course, last year also TNA worked hard to give that best nurse award for in associating with Asianet and all. It's a great step, tremendous step that we need to take forward. Why can't we recognize a nurse who is working with the COVID in a local situation? Like that, we can arrange a meeting with the nurses who are working. At least we can pour this appreciation that we need to do. That giving recognition is a force multiplier. Then reorganize things. We do have a lot of resources. It is scattered. And now the things are getting more in a focused manner. A lot of workforces are there. Now our government is taking all these resources in an effective way. So reorganizing things is an effective way by we can fight this issue. First injury, it's an injury that nurses can face, that is life threat, traumatic injury, loss, grief injury, inner conflicts, moral injury, and where. So this is the stress injury. And some of this injury may not be visible. Some of these injuries are subjective experience. For that, effective counseling services need to be given for nurses. Supportive service.
Otherwise, next month salary cut.
Salary won't be there, that is the issue. But please mute yourself. Yeah.
Next month salary cut. Less class.
Now, moral injury. It's a new term I coined here. That is moral injury. I don't know how many of you are aware about this moral injury. Life and death triad and resource decisions.
Nice, I don't know. I will do like this only. Next time, one more time I will check everything. But some stupid people, they are not properly giving the certificate also.
நான் வந்து மதுரை எதுவுமே மைல் இல்லை அபிஷியல் குரூப்லையும் இல்லை நர்சிங் ஸ்டாஃப்லையும் இல்லை அப்போ எனக்கு
Mute yourself.
போனதுக்கு அப்புறம் நர்சிங் ஸ்டாஃப் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணேன்.
Hello.
அதனால அவளுக்கு தெரியாத கான்ஃபரன்ஸ் இருக்குங்கிறது. அதனால இப்போ நீங்க ஏதாவது ஃபார்வர்ட் பண்ணீங்கன்னா நான் அவளுக்கு டைரக்டா ஃபார்வர்ட் பண்ணிருக்கேன். அதனால அவ அட்டெண்ட் பண்ணுவாளா, அட்டெண்ட் பண்ணி சொல்லுவா. லிங்க் கொடுத்தாலுமே
Life and death triad is taking place. Whether it is a life and death triad is taking place or decision or resource decisions. When a patient is coming to our hospital, there is triad system. And that be in some of the European countries. When the number of ventilators were flooded with the people.
நீங்க ஒரு நாள் ஆன்காலஜி
LSC college. Then
LSC hospital,
GRT college.
GRT அப்புறம் ஆன்காலஜி நீங்க ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஒன் சென்ட் பண்ணீங்க.
Everybody from
international 3 acts. And one that GRT college only, actually they have not given option of lecturer. Everybody there, they have clinical nurse, specialist or professor, vice principal. So I have, if others they have written, if others specify, I have pressed that and Shilpa Pillai lecturer I have written. So in my certificate also Shilpa Pillai lecturer, comma, if others specify, they have written.
Hello.
How? No problem. It is also not.
But நீங்க வந்து இத வந்து
Hello participants, please mute yourself. Otherwise it will cause disturbance to the speaker. Please mute yourself.
They are not asking our registration. Na? They will ask our registration, then we can, they will upload. We cannot.
Please mute them because you can see who is speaking.
I think it is not because everybody knows we are not attending the class.
Okay, thank you. So moral injury is a major thing. When we see a patient is coming to our hospital, of course there is triage system. This we saw in Italy, this we saw in European countries, where the number of resources, number of ventilators were less. Many elderly were not treated effectively. I don't know, this is the news, that can be fake news. But if the number of cases increase, escalate, here also, we need to triage them. We need to take a decision whom to treat. It's a moral injury for a nurse. Being a nurse, I don't have any difference between an aged person and an elder, younger person. So knowing that under different circumstances, a person's life may have been saved. So if this triage system is taking place, as soon as I know this person, if he gets a better care in a ventilator, definitely he can. But knowing that if I am not doing, it's a moral injury for me. Work duties affecting all life. My work duties, because after caring, I need to go back to my home. I need to take care of. So these work duties are affecting my family. It's a moral injury for me. Not wanting to work in dangerous situations.
hours like this we are not calculating, ma'am. Like this much hours one unit, then okay, half hour we will take the topic and we will give them some revision, or I'll tell them to write, ma'am. That time we can extend, but if hours we are calculating, that is a problem. I don't have problem, ma'am. If much like you, if I am getting 170 hours, there's no problem. The ma'am is not there, no need to write notes, ma'am. Then I can take any hours. Only writing notes is a problem.
Witnessing unjustifiable acts from co-workers, that is also there.
If you want, means if you can, ma'am, you give me more hours in OG, ma'am. Because I want to get a little bit acquainted with OG also, na, ma'am.
Okay.
Otherwise, no, otherwise three of them will look at each other and are like we are asking some money or something. Even if in money we can buy, then no problem. That also is not possible here. In my college, ma'am, the teachers can take print, but they have to give money. Okay, then that is
Please
also not
mute
problem.
yourself. If you are having any queries, please write it in the chat box. We'll discuss it later after the session.
But that is not for you to take home, na. That is syllabus only, na. For personal things, if we are research or anything, then downloading, then we have to give.
Okay, thank you. Unjustifiable acts from co-workers that we can see. There are some unfair activities like unethical research are going on that we need to address. That is a moral injury. Even if we can care, we can protect a person, we can save a person's life because of lack of resources, because of lack of money, because of lack of any other thing. They are not getting that treatment effectively. So that is unjustifiable acts from co-workers. You can witness that's a moral injury, not empathetic or compassionate as usual. I was a good empathetic person. I was compassionate. Because of the load, I am not able to. So moral injury is there. We need to address that moral injury. Surviving when others are dying. I am surviving because I am this many things, or I am so and so. My colleague, another person who is dying, I cannot do anything. That is a moral injury, not being able to save a particular patient. Maybe we may be a little bit concerned about a particular person. If I am not in a position to help that patient, it can end up with a moral injury. So moral injury is a concept we need to address. So recovery from stress that I already told you that all those things can be, and it can be based on this concept, this framework, sense of safety, calming, connect, self-efficacy, and hope. All these things need to be involved. Now, towards the end, that small steps are flexible, steps are effective. Timing and context is important. Mentoring and problem solving is important. Refer to higher centers. If a person experiences, don't go for a long time objective. Be with small steps or short time objective. And for that short time objective, you can have small steps, and it should be flexible one. This can be effective. Skills, what we need: recognizing skill, act skill, knowing skills. I already explained all those things. Now, regarding self-care, where we need to, this is the area that majority of nurses are not getting it. Self-care problems. I already told you, sleep problem is there. No excuse for healthy lifestyle. Healthy lifestyle they are not adopting because of this one. Away from self-medication. Be away from the self-medication. Get a better sleep. No excuse for healthy lifestyle. Even if you are exhausted, even if you are involved with a patient care, go for healthy lifestyle. Always get away from self-medication. That's a major problem majority of nurses are facing. Toxic people and situations need to be isolated. There are people who are toxic. There are situations which is problematic. Always avoid, always remove toxic people and situation from our vicinity. Limit visual media. Very, very, very important. Because a lot of news are coming. And this news is, many of these news are stressful. I mean, creating stress. And limit this visual media. Limit your screen time. Kind on yourself. If you are working, definitely you can work effectively. One good example I can quote: a person is there who is standing in an aeroplane, who is with this parachute and all. First of all, he needs to wear this parachute. Secondly, he must know how to operate this parachute, and he must know when to open this parachute. A nurse who is working with these COVID patients exactly in that position, already they jumped. Now they need to take care of themselves. Emotional stability is important. Then only we can identify how to use, when to use, why to use all those resources that we get from this self-care. If you do this self-care effectively you can counteract. So be kind on yourself. That is the request what I have to give for my fellow nurses. Then these are some of the problems. Anxiety, already explained in a nutshell, anxiety regarding unfamiliar working environments. When a nurse is coming for the first time, there can be unfamiliar working environment, especially in COVID ward. The environment may be different. Even though he's working in a previous ward where he was working, the environment may change, system may be changed, the resources may be changed, the people who are working with me may change. So that can create anxiety. Lack of work experience in infectious disease. That is a major concern, especially those who are working right now. There was not even any epidemic we could find so far. This is the first exposure. Some nurses who are working in this Calicut area already got this experience when at the time of Nipah virus. But that lack of experience is a major problem. Worry about getting infected. At any time, I can get infection because exact mode of transmission is not that much known even now. Huge workload and long-term fatigue. Another problem. Depression due to unsuccessful cure of critically ill patients. Worry about their families and vice versa. These are the problems. And for these problems, I need to address this one. Depression due to unsuccessful care of critically ill patients. Depression. Because there are patients whom we are caring. These are some of the problems. Maybe I could see nurses who are working in this ICU, in our hospital. For that, we can equip each medical team with a psychologist for early psychological assessment and intervention. Very, very, very important. Nowadays, WHO, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and MHANS is planning a massive program. Training of trainers, TOT program is scheduled after 19th in order to support psychological support for nurses. This is very important. Not only for the nurses, not only for nurses, even any medical team members need this support, psychological assessment intervention. Then strengthen professional training to deepen the understanding of the disease. It is happening, this type of webinars and all. I don't know how many nurses who are rightly there in front of me, who are working in the grassroots. We need to change that. We need to address their problem. Academicians and educators are there, but we need to address the grassroots nurses. That is very important. So strengthen professional training and deepen the understanding of the disease. Share successful therapy cases. That is also important. Last day also, one patient, she has 4 children. 4 are mentally retarded. And when this patient died,
അപ്പൊ നിങ്ങൾ മൂന്നുപേരും കൂടെയാണ് കളിച്ചേ? ഞാൻ വിചാരിച്ചു ചേട്ടനൊക്കെ കളിച്ചെന്ന്. നിങ്ങൾ ഇതാണ് കളിച്ചേ, നമ്പറാ കളിച്ചേ. കഴുത കളിക്കാൻ വരുന്നോ?
I'm not blaming anybody. Just now I told you, strengthen professional training. A person, I know what she spoke. This is the way. I'm not blaming anybody. So merely getting a certificate is their, if I don't know, if merely getting a certificate is their intention. I'm not saying anything important is getting from this class, but at least anyway. Then share successful therapy cases. Yes, day before yesterday, one patient died. She was with 4 children with the mental retardation, and these 2 sons. One of them was with a mild mental retardation. He called me, being a counseling personnel who are providing this counseling for this group, and he was crying. and at least they need somebody to take this body from the hospital, because there's a lot of protocols are there. And one of this nurse gave me one number, one person who was working with the welfare of such individuals, and I could connect them with that one, and that issue solved. When I shared this story with another nurse, that was an insight for her. Yes, that many things we can do. So always share success therapy cases. This is not therapy cases, but successfully, if we resolve a problem, that we can share. And because of that intervention, that nurse's intervention, that problems, at least we could solve that simple problem related to that body dispatch and all. What I'm trying to say is try to share. That will be a great help for individuals who are working. Actively express emotions to relieve tension and anxiety. Tension release is a must. There should be some specific ways with which nurses who are working in the grassroots can ventilate their tension and anxiety. Perform relaxation exercise under guidance of mental health professionals. A mental health professional can guide effectively. I am 100% sure mental health professionals can help with these individuals with the relaxation exercise and all. That is effective. Now, worry about their family is another important thing. So definitely communicate with the colleagues who are with the same experience or similar feelings. Regularly chat and exchange with the family through all those videos and all. Establish a social care and support group to find and resolve worries accordingly. Set up a professional team to provide remote mental health training and guidance. Our government is nowadays focusing on that one. Individualized psychotherapies or appropriate medical interventions to nurses in multiple ways can reduce worries about their family. Of course, to conclude, we can decide where we need to go, whether to focus on strength or go for vulnerability. Guiding ideals are selflessness, loyalty, patience, moral code, and excellence. Whether we need to focus on the strength or vulnerability, it is in your hand. Nurses who are working with the patient. For example, if selflessness is the guiding ideal, you can go for placing welfare of others or on welfare. That is extreme case. And to this extreme, not seeking help for health problems because professional help is not a priority for me, you can decide. Always keep a balance. Be in between, not to go for extreme. Like loyalty, commitment to accomplish mission and protect others. That is this extremity. And if it is the guilt and complicated bereavement after loss of others, it is this extremity. You can be placed somewhere in between. Where you place is important. For that, these type of intervention, support system, psychosocial support, guidance, relaxation therapies, all those things are available. Like that patients not aware of significant symptoms of suffering in this extremity, toughness and ability to endure hardship without complaints is this extremity. Not to go for two extremities. One extremity is of course is a strength. This extremity is of course is a vulnerability. Try to be in between. Of course, it's a continuum, like moral and excellence. You can decide where to go. So with that, I'm concluding this one, and this is an important area nurses nowadays facing. What all things I shared is from my experience, and what I could collect from my small studies related to this for a big study. Yes, we are planning for a big study where nurses preparedness and future empowerment are possible. So definitely that would be a helpful thing for our profession. And once again, I thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is a question in the chat box.
Yes,
Is the emotional trauma higher among nurses or doctors in the pandemic?
actually, that's a good question. But the thing is, emotional trauma, many of these doctors won't communicate their emotional trauma to us. But they are communicating their emotional trauma to nurses with whom they are working. That is 100% sure. And I am giving counseling for nurses and those who are working in this specific group. Emotional trauma for nurses are very high. From their opinion, doctors are also equally affected, because when we grade doctors, different stratas are there. The senior most may not be coming to direct contact with the patient. Those doctors who are coming to contact with the patients are experiencing same trauma as that of nurses who are working in the grassroots level. That is my experience.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think there is no more queries.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you, sir, for giving such a wonderful session. And dear delegates, hope you all had a fruitful session and it will be useful in your personal and professional life. Now, on behalf of management, staff, and students of St. Joseph's College of Nursing, we express our heartfelt gratitude to our resource persons, Dr. Priya Teresa Thomas and Dr. Riaz KM, for sharing their valuable thoughts with us. Thank you, ma'am and sir. And dear participants, a big thank you to all of you. Without you, this webinar wouldn't have happened. Once again, thank you all. Stay safe and have a nice time. And dear participants, please fill out your feedback form. If you are filling out the feedback form, then only you will get the certificate. Okay, thank you once again and thank you all.